Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, April 11th, 2017, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall and Council Chambers. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Seeliger?
Here.
Ms. Van Dil?
Here.
Ms. Hatzenbuehler?
Here.
Ms. Davis? Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Morioni?
Here.
Mr. Eder?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Presente.
Ms. Donato? Ms. Farah is not here yet. Ms. Hassan, I believe, is in Detroit, and Mr. Siegel, not here. And Chair Ferraro.
Here. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the chair's report tonight, I just wanted to let board members know to mark your calendars for Monday, April 24th. That is a meeting of City Council where we will be making our budget presentation to the council. Also on that agenda, it's an important evening for the schools because they'll be talking about our CIP request and also the school facilities bond will be on their agenda, and they may take action on that evening. So if you could make it to that, that would be great. They will have a first reading of our budget on the 1st of next month, and their vote is scheduled for the 15th at this time. And that concludes my report. Moving on to report of the superintendent. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have a report of the students tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Christopher Kaufman was a beloved former employee of the Portland Public Schools who served as lead psychologist for PPS for more than 12 years from 1999 to 2011. Dr. Kaufman passed away on March 28th at age 55 from brain cancer. During his career, Chris was a champion for children. He helped countless children, parents, and teachers understand learning issues. He provided workshops on brain-based learning topics to teachers, administrators, and clinicians throughout Maine, New England, and the country, and was considered an expert in the fields of brain research and executive function. Chris will forever be remembered as a dedicated clinician, an advocate for students and teachers, and an impassioned champion of education. Dr. Kaufman will be greatly missed by students, parents, and staff in our schools and in our greater Portland community. Our thoughts and prayers go out tonight to Chris's family, his wife Sarah, and daughters Mia and Sophia. On March 2nd, the Portland Public Schools participated in Read Across America Day, the National Education Association's annual celebration of reading. The day honors the birthday of the beloved children's book author we know as Dr. Seuss and is designed to get students excited about reading. I and other staff members, as well as local celebrities such as Mayor Strimling and TV personalities, all enjoyed reading aloud to and with students in our schools that day. Now, the Maine Education Association is building on the momentum generated by that day. The MEA has secured funding again this year to donate a book and bookmark to every first grade student in the state of Maine. The MEA knows how important it is for families to have home libraries to support their children's literacy. Yesterday, Portland Education Association President Sue Olafson, I think Sue is here, stopped by each of our elementary schools to drop off a box with books and bookmarks for our first graders. We're always grateful for our partnership and our support from the MEA and the Portland Education Association for this wonderful gift to help our students and their families. This week, April 10th through the 14th, is National Assistant Principals Week. It's very cool. This is a time to honor and celebrate the contributions of our assistant principals and the contributions that they make to the success of our students. The job of an assistant principal is fairly complex. Assistant principals have to be educational leaders who can meet the academic and social needs of all students. Their roles include being motivators, experts in behavior management, organizers, and role models, to name just a few. We're proud of all of our assistant principals, and we have several of them here today. Among them, and you know this already, Ann Hanna of Ocean Avenue Elementary School happens to be Maine's 2017 Elementary School Assistant Principal of the Year. And Ann just walked in. And we love Ann, but we consider all of our assistant principals to be standouts as well. We're deeply grateful to all of our assistant principals for everything they do each and every day to ensure our student success. They're an important part of making Portland Public Schools great. I'd like to take this opportunity to urge all Portland Public School parents and guardians to make their voices heard in our annual parent survey. As you probably know by now, because I say this at every board meeting, the survey closes Friday, April 14th, so that's this Friday, so we're really close to our last chance to participate. The survey only takes a few minutes and is available online in English and 8 other languages. I personally took it in Spanish, and it was great. The survey is voluntary and anonymous. If you don't want to take the survey online, hard copies are also available in all of our schools for parents that wish to participate in writing. You can find a link to the online version of the survey on the very front page of the district's website, www.portlandschools.org. This is the 4th year that Portland Public Schools has collected survey data from parents. The district and schools use parent survey data to assist us in planning, decision-making, and program evaluation. I encourage all families to participate in the survey and let their voices be heard. And finally, this is just a reminder that I suspect lots of my colleagues in the room don't need to be reminded about, that the Portland Public Schools will not be in session the week of April 17th through the 21st, because that is our April vacation week. For teachers and students, the break begins a little bit earlier. On our calendar this year, there will be no school for pre-kindergarten through grade 12 this Friday, April 14th. I wish everyone a happy Patriots Day, which this year is on Monday, April 17th. This will personally be my first time observing this unique Maine, Massachusetts holiday. I think I know what it's about. It's great. I'm always all about any holidays. So I wish everyone a safe and restful April break, and it looks like the weather is really going to cooperate with us, which is also very good. So with that, I'm going to ask Principal Marcia Gendron and Assistant Principal Boyd Marley and their team to please step up and share with us the East End Community Schools success plan.
How many administrators does it take? Yeah. So do you want to take that? Just in case the technology doesn't work now. Good evening. I'm Marcia Gendron, and I'm the principal of East End Community School. And this is Boyd Marley, the assistant principal. And we, last year, had you all at our school when we gave the school success plan, so we thought we'd bring a picture of what our school looked like outside today on this beautiful spring day. And we're still not quite sure who's sitting out there and what time they were sitting out there, but that's a typical day at East End, looking out over Casco Bay and also Back Cove. So welcome to East End Community School. Our school opened in the fall of 2006, and it has now been open for 10 years. So many of you remember the day that that school opened in the fall, and this year we're celebrating our 10th year with 10 family events and looking forward to another great 10 years. Since you are not inside the school, we have a picture of the outside, we thought that we'd give you a picture of the school inside, starting with our demographics. We are a school right now of students pre-K through grade 5, 409 students. The school has varied from 450 to this year we started in around 386. This year we welcomed 10 students from the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf in grades K through 5 who have joined as students at our school. And we also have 16 pre-K students who are enrolled in our one pre-K class, and those students will become our kindergartners next year. So that's the first year that we've had that transition. For our English learning students, we had a threshold demographic this year where our school now is a little bit over 50% for students who are multilingual. And of those students, we have 22 languages that are spoken, and the predominant language is Somali, but we also have an increasing population of Portuguese and French speakers, and about, I think, 20% of our children now are Spanish-speaking students. And we've also added American Sign Language this year because that is a language that is being translated in many of our classrooms where our Governor Baxter students are participating in their learning. And for our socioeconomic information, which I think is sometimes a moniker for our school is the highest SES with 79%. The district average is 55%, and the state average is 47%. And an interesting demographic that has created a challenge for our school is the student mobility. And this year, after the start of school, which means after the first day of school, we have had 126 students enroll, and we have had 96 students move in. So the totality of that change is 222 children, or 53%. So if you think about what does that look like in the classroom, at the end of the year, or ostensibly at this point, 50% of the children in the classroom may be brand new. 50% may have started the year. And connected to that, but not necessarily, is the McKinney-Vento students. And those comprise 7%, but that's a soft number because of the challenge in identification. So we'd say that's probably a little over 10%. Interestingly enough, we are not considered a neighborhood school. We have a significant amount of students that are being bused, so 86% of our students are eligible for busing and 14% for walking. So busing at our school is a complicated event. So looking at our demographics and looking at the history of the school, there has been a challenge with creating a school success plan in which there is achievement at the center of it. And as you know, this school was identified 6 years ago as a persistently low achieving school, one of the bottom 5 schools in the state. We received the school improvement grant funding to look at what could we do as a school to get the school back on a success trajectory. And while that may seem a challenge unto itself around the achievement, what we decided to look at is a shift in a plan in which achievement wasn't the leading indicator or the focus, that it really would be the result of all of the other things that we could do to support students. So we were influenced by the work of Ron Ferguson closing the achievement gap and the work he's done through Harvard with the Poverty Center. And this influenced and really served as an umbrella for our work, that it was not about an achievement gap that exists in poverty schools. It is really about an opportunity gap. So thinking about that, do you want to go back just one? Yeah. So thinking about that, that made us shift our thinking, that what are the opportunities that our children would need? What are the opportunities that our children come to school and haven't had as part of their preschool experience or their early years experience? What are the opportunities that are not available to them, whether it's through education or socially emotional growth, and how do we as a school begin to identify those and focus on them? And so our challenge was to take that idea of opportunities and that access of opportunities, and to really say, what would it mean for our school to be a student-focused school? And that student-focused school would be that the work that we did that would ultimately impact student achievement began with the focus on students. So these ideas and these beliefs were really a combination of research, practice, and what was emerging around the work with high poverty schools. And so what we learned, and first and foremost in our school, is knowing our students and our families, knowing where they live, knowing the challenges that they face is critical to understanding how they can be successful in school. Building positive relationships. The more positive relationships the children have with school, the more likely they are to like school, the more likely they are to like school, the more likely they are to focus on their learning. And engaging students. Students that are engaged in the learning then can translate that into being motivated, and the motivation we hope translated or would translate ultimately into their learning. And this idea of a sense of belonging, community, when you think about that mobility and the transiency rate and the number of children who come from other countries that are learning the language, learning to assimilate into school, how could we as a school community embrace that? And ultimately believing that every child could learn, but the pathway for learning would not be the same, and that children would be different, and their pathway might not be as straight and linear as it goes from grade to grade. Go ahead. So tonight, as part of our success plan, we're going to talk about how those beliefs have transferred into action or into practice, and how along the way some of the programming that we have has been integrated around those beliefs, that they're not separate, it's an integrative model around looking at a student-focused school. So for those of you that have visited Rise and Shine or come into our school in the morning, you know that's the center of our school in terms of programming, and really is emblematic of all of those beliefs, that children come into school and for 40 minutes they are engaged in activities in which they are connected with positive, caring adults. They get to try out new things. There's inclusion of music, and there's wellness, there's community service, and those are the opportunities that the children have to try out something new, maybe get good at it, maybe become more proficient, and even to develop talents that they didn't know that they had. And so the Rise and Shine program has been 5 years, and the program has started from a very, I think, a very basic idea of coming into school and looking forward to the best part of the day was probably the greatest likelihood that children would want to come to school. So the Rise and Shine program at this point has students in grades 2, 3, 4, 5, and we offer 99 activities a week. 3 times a year we shift it over in 3 sessions. So this idea of coming to school, being excited about coming to school, also made us look at how do children get to school. If you think about that, 86% of the children are eligible for the bus, but it's not always around distance. Some of it was around a hazard zone. And so we started 4 years ago the walking school bus, and that was funded through a grant with the Department of Transportation, and it is now a school-based program, and the district has supported the salary of the coordinator. And so we are the first school in Maine to have the grant that has then been sustainable and has also been integrated into the life of the school. And at this, we have a brochure on the walking school bus. At this point, we have several community volunteers. In fact, they're the ones that really do most of the walking, leading. And we have 3 routes, one from Munjoy North, Munjoy South, and Kennedy Park. And so for many of these children, coming to school now is not about sitting on a bus in the morning, but it's about being with a caring adult who engages them with conversation, as well as really assuring that they get to school safely. And along with that is our emerging community partnerships, and those have emanated really from Rise and Shine outreach, as well as the walking school bus. But the community partnerships have become more than an organization coming into our school, that they really are embracing this belief and understanding that knowing who our kids are and building those positive relationships has a positive and long-standing impact on the students. And so at this point, we have 23 community partnerships, and some of them are profit and nonprofit. And I think the one that we're the most excited about is last year, the fire department wanted to change their educational outreach program. So they did a little bit of a, I think let's call it a little pilot in our school during Rise and Shine. So I never knew what apparatus they were going to bring in or what they were going to do, but that partnership emerged into Junior Fire Academy. And Junior Fire Academy has become a signature program for the fire department, and they're going to be presenting it nationally. So it was a great idea that they had of how could they reach out to kids. So we're looking forward to all of them becoming firemen in the not-too-distant future. So we get kids to school, we get them excited about school, but we know they come hungry and they don't always have clothes. And the snack pantry started in our school 5 years ago from a parent who was deeply concerned about the lack of food access for children. And a year ago, last summer, it was connected with Angela Adams and the Locker Project, and it's now, our model is replicated statewide. And it was a very simple concept that we give children food when they need it. We make sure they have it to take home. And also the clothing closet emerged this year, and the Munjoy Hill Neighborhood Association is helping us with that. So, you know, those are simple things, but for our kids, knowing that they have food and they have clothing, it is basic, and it is evidenced in the fact that they also know that when they come to school, it is accessible to them. And so looking at, we have engaged children. We have children now that we know they have adequate food, they have adequate clothing, but a lot of our kids come to school with trauma. That is part of their narrative. And so as a school, we decided this year that we needed to become more informed and to understand that idea of primary trauma, secondary trauma. And linked to that was, how do we build a social emotional curriculum? So we launched one school-wide, and we have partnered with Defending Portland and helping us to look at how can we, in our practice and in our interactions with children, understand some of the trauma experiences that they have had. Connected to that also is when you enroll 126 students after the year started, you can imagine a teacher who's saying, I've just got the last 3 kids, I'm getting another one. But when you think about it, when children move in and children move out, that we have to be able to place the children quickly, and we also want to know as much as we can about the children. So we have developed a new student enrollment process in which we make sure that child is supported and the teacher is supported. And that support also extends to our transition specialist, which was a position that you funded last year to support our homeless students. So we have a social worker transition specialist that can really track and support those kids. And along with that, if we really believe that we're a school that's focused on students, that we want to hear their voice, and that we believe that choice is just integral to the work that we do with the students, and that they do have a sense of ownership and investment. And so part of what we've been doing with Rise and Shine is having the older students mentor, design Rise and Shine activities, and also we have a student voice survey that we administer every year to let us know how we're doing with kids feeling a sense of belonging and connectedness and efficacy in the school. And so when you look at that, that really is a student student-centered approach in terms of how do we make sure that children can be ready to learn. So we also have families. Our children have families that work different schedules. They have families that don't speak English, and for them, coming to school is something that is sometimes challenging for them in order to participate. So we started this very simple idea based on the premise that many of our families told us they had never seen the school in action during the day. So we started Family Fridays, and once a month we invite families to come in at a certain grade level, and we have an event attached to it, and the parents get to have a delicious hot school lunch, and they also get to see what is it like to sit in the cafeteria, which is that social construct for children, and we've averaged between 40 and 60 families a month, which has been great. And families then can connect with other families, and it really gives parents an insight into the school during a time of the day they might not typically see. And so lunch apparently is a big thing at our school as well, when our parents are coming in. The kids, and again, when kids have voice and choice, they tell us what they like and what works for them. And the students were saying that they want to be able to speak their own language, that they have a heritage language, and that at lunchtime we were asking them to speak in English. And so we examined that and we said, well, what would it look like if we allowed children to speak their native language? So we have middle of the day lunch groups now that are with parent volunteers, and the children have lunch with that adult and talk in their language. So we have Arabic, Portuguese, French, and now Spanish. And we don't know what next lunch will emerge, but it was also where the students were saying they don't want to lose their language. And so what could they do to maintain it? So it's working both ways for children who are learning the language and want to maintain it. Okay, you can go on to the next one. So the focus on the first one was really looking at that student readiness. But what we also know is that we need to find those pathways to learning for students. And when you think about a school success plan, it's not linear in nature. So we know that the social emotional reality of children does impact their ability to learn. And these highlight what we've been focusing on in terms of our professional development this year and our school improvement work. And integrating the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf program has been a significant undertaking for a school in which understanding two curriculums, two ways of learning, and we're not sure how children that are deaf or hard of hearing learn how to read, and what does that look like in a K classroom. And so that Governor Baxter School for the Deaf, we believe, is in the right place at East End Community School, because different ways of learning and being diverse is just inherent in the culture. We had 10 teachers that took sign language every other week for 20 weeks so that they could learn how to communicate more effectively with children. We also have our early learner program. We're focusing on pre-K, K, and 1 and having continuity and looking at how can we have a more vocabulary-rich environment for our youngest learners, because that is a lagging indicator. We continue to look at the use of technology, and that's to build fluency in terms of phonemic awareness and fact fluency, which are two areas that our kids struggle with. And we use formative assessment. We did an assessment for learning course in partnership with the University of Maine this year, so teachers begin to look at those incremental and discrete steps of improvement for children. Writing conventions, we've been working on writing for 5 years. Our children can write, but they're not always using punctuation and capitalization. So as a school, we've gone deeper into that this year and really helping kids to not only become good at writing, but to have all of the attributes of proficient writers. And part of our pathway to learning, and what we try out different things. We look at how can we group students that we know that students that struggle with learning or first have to learn the language before they learn the academics. It's not all horizontal in terms of if you're in third grade, all third graders do this. All math has to be from one program. So we continue to explore flexible ways to group kids academically, as well as in terms of finding out where they are and moving them along. And centered to all of this is making sure that teachers have lots of opportunities for professional development. So sort of from that opportunity perspective is this idea that the more that teachers are able to collaborate and to examine their practices as well as to explore more things, that it's going to help in dealing with that diverse population. So looking at that, it always translates. So what does that mean for our school? How do we know what we're doing makes a difference? We've been working on some of these initiatives for 5 years. Some of them are new to us this year. So if we have a student-focused school, what do the students tell us? And so in the last year when we gave the Student Voice Survey, which is a national survey that Stan Davies developed, we learned that 96% of our students report having a positive connection with at least one adult. That alone is the single most important factor for children long-term with graduation. So we think that the Rise and Shine and really those positive relationships, it is resonating with the students. 87% of our students feel part of the school. That is an amazing statistic when you think about 53% of the kids change over. 81% of students report seeing peers inviting and including others. So that idea of being inclusive and welcoming not only extends adult to student, but student to student. And 80% of our peers report and that encouragement and support on a regular basis, so that it's happening in the classroom, it's happening throughout the building. And these are Mr. Marley's statistics because he does the student discipline, but over 3 years, we've seen a 59% decrease in student behavior referrals. And that is significant because we were spending a lot of time dealing with student behavior. So how does that translate into this idea of it's an opportunity gap? How do we know? Does that then connect with achievement? So our MEA achievement scores for 2016, which were a year ago, in reading, our school average of proficiency was 48, and the district and state was 49. That was a big moment for us as a school. And in math, our school average was 34%, and the district and state was 38%. And in our school, they added in the newcomers who aren't aggregated only for educational purposes, their scores for participation, so we actually think it would be a little bit higher. But this was the first time as a school that we said all of those opportunities that we spent our energy and our efforts in focusing on does translate into students then knowing where they can learn, they can be successful, and they can achieve. So we know our work is not done, and we know that there are challenges. And for us, our challenges, I don't think we would have said a year ago. And those challenges are in the demographics that you saw at the beginning. When a school has 222 children in and out, how do you track them? Think about a math program coming into a math program, and you may have had interrupted schooling, meeting the needs of the homeless and the newcomer students. We have students who have been educated in other countries. They come to our school, they have the academics, but they don't have the language. How do we bridge that? Our incoming 5-year-olds are not always ready for school. They struggle. That is a challenge for us, and math and number sense is definitely an area where we continue to try looking at that early readiness. How can we bridge the gap? And so every now and then, challenges aside, we have an opportunity where we think achievement and opportunity come together. And today was a big moment at East End Community School. This was the first time we ever placed first in the all-city math team. And so those are our math students there that came home with came back to school with the ribbon. So in terms of our school's success, it's moments like this that we like to capture. So, any questions?
First of all, thank you so much for presenting. And I got to tell my colleagues, these school presentations, the success plans are my favorite part of the meetings. It really is. The personal insight that we get from the staff. So I really enjoy these. On the demographic page, can you and maybe I should know this, but
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to ask. What is the McKinney-Vento? I'm sorry. Can you tell me what that is?
Absolutely. Sharon would love to say that. So one of the demographics that is tracked in schools is what I think most people would call homeless, and we call them McKinney-Vento because under McKinney-Vento, those students have rights as well as families to have limited disruption to their education. For us, those are students who are in the shelter. Those are students who are doubling up. Those are students, no, what's number 3?
They can be displaced.
Displaced.
Shelters.
Or just destabilized housing. Once we know that family has, what we might say, be in transition, they are then protected for the year under McKinney-Vento, which is a federal law. We try not to call them homeless. It feels stigmatizing, so we call them McKinney-Vento.
John?
Representative Marley, how did you get the 60% decrease in student behavior referrals? Please tell us about that.
Thank you. I'll call you Representative Eater as well. John and I served together in the legislature. I certainly can't take credit for that by any means. We were doing the numbers today, and we were over the last 3 years as far as, and actually Peter McCormack, another AP who started before me at East End, sort of started the way, if you will, as far as the work that we did. We do a weekly meeting where we do student support, and we look at the students that have been referred or who might be displaced or have other risk factors, if you will, as far as academics, whatever. And so we look at that, we look at the patterns of behaviors, and so then we create an action plan. And who meets there is the Dean of Students, who's Dan Nogar, Ms. Gendron, myself, the social worker and the nurse. Ms. Crocker just did a training with APs today around attendance, so we also look at our attendance numbers at that time. So we try to take a regular look at those numbers. So it's not just the behavior. I think we're looking at the whole child, and that's what some of the pieces you looked at as far as the philosophy of the school that Ms. Gendron has started, which is if we can get the child to come in a positive mood state, if you will, and meet those basic needs, Maslow before Bloom sort of thinking, if you will. I think that gets us to a point so that we can then address, instead of behaviors, it's really around their lag in skills. Because a lot of times, I don't think any child necessarily misbehaves purposefully. You're trying to teach those pro-social skills. You're trying to teach them readiness for learning. And we talked about the social-emotional curriculum. It's called Second Step. And we started at the primary level. We're moving it up through the older students, but I think that's also been a piece of it. So there's a lot of parts going, but I think it's just making sure that we have those relationships, we build in that curriculum, and we address not the behavior, but we try to teach the lag and skills so those behaviors don't become a habit and repeat. All right? Thank you.
Jenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Principal Gendron and Principal Marley for an amazing presentation. I'm just continually impressed with the work that you do at East End despite the demographic challenges. It's every time I come and visit, come to a family dinner or, attend one of the school assemblies, I just feel all of the positive energy coming from the students, being very engaged, which is obviously due to the work that you do, making sure that students feel safe and supported, that there's an adult that cares. So I actually had a question about the work that you're doing this year around trauma-informed practice and SEL, which you did talk about in greater detail. But this is actually, those are two areas that we've seen other elementary schools around the district integrating in their school success plan. And I'm wondering, as a school district, what can we be doing to support your work as you are working on these issues at the building level?
That's a big question. I would say for us that we looked at trauma through a linear model, that somehow a child would be identified or they would have had certain experiences that would make them vulnerable to having trauma. And what we've learned is that trauma is far more broad-reaching and that a school really has to have a certain level of sensitivity to it. And so the work that we did was to first look at our McKinney-Vento students and what are the challenges and the chronic stressors that face them. And the notion of stressors being all the things that come at them and the lack of predictability and the lack of control. And what does that look like for them in their school experience, as well as the experience of being a young child who doesn't have much choice or voice in their destination. We then looked at what does that trauma look like in the classroom? How does it impact, again, behavior? For students that may look like they're misbehaving, it could be because it's trauma related or something that happened to them. So having that awareness and consciousness of everyone on staff. And also then to look at the impact on those of us that work in a school like East End, that there is the trauma that we look at. Sometimes it's hard for us to feel that we have some control over the destiny of children. And what does that feel like? If, when you see children come in and they're homeless and that we have children that don't know where they're going to sleep the next night when they leave. And we're just, how can you get back to school and how can we help you? And to understand what does that mean as a school and community to embrace it, but not to be identified by it. So what we've learned, and our work has been with Defending Portland and the work with Barrett Wilkinson, who also was working with schools on the Second Step curriculum. It is bridging that idea that the more that we understand how trauma and childhood experiences impact each child. So what Mr. Marley was talking about, we kind of have modeled our approach as a school around what a hospital does. They get the information, they deploy it, they come up with a short-term plan and come back. And so it's having that agility to look at how we organize and structure. But I think it's a multiple approach. It's around the education and staff understanding it and also understanding the impact of those stressors on staff and students. So it's probably a non-answer, but it's the work we need to figure out. But at least we started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Marnie?
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. I've always been so impressed with the Rise and Shine program that you do, and 99 events per week is just stunning to me, incredible. But beyond that, I hadn't heard about your Family Friday idea, and I'm so excited to hear that that's taking off too, because I think that integrating the families can also make them feel a part of it. The kids come home, they can feel like they can talk to their family about it, and it just is a wonderful way that I think even for us, we've struggled at how do we best approach and integrate families. So I appreciate that's working. It seems to be working well. And then again, your scores are looking really great, and that's wonderful to hear. And so just keep up the great work. You're just really a shining star in our district. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I would just add that I'm really interested in how East End has come into its identity over the since it began. It's really unique that you have that time to measure and you really started from scratch. and I think it's just remarkable where you've come. I really like the language lunch idea. I think it's really interesting how the students kind of have that awareness of losing language and that they're wanting to address that. So that's a neat addition. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add to your comment, Marnie, that one of the ideas that was generated around the Family Fridays came from our multilingual families who said when they have conferences, they always meet in the library. They'd never seen other parts of the school. They'd never, so we can give you that experience. So it's here, again, we don't, it's not, our approach is to try to be responsive to those needs as they emerge. So we're never quite sure where things are headed, but and I think, is Jane here tonight? Jane has been fabulous with this because we're going, we could have 40 people, we could have 60 people, we don't know. But, and the parents have really enjoyed having lunch with their kids, which is very unique. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just comment real quickly? First of all, thank you very much, Principal Gendron and Assistant Principal Marley, for the presentation. Obviously, everybody knows the tremendous work that is going on at East End. I think you've done a great job of representing that. I want to just make sure that everybody understands that it goes beyond Rise and Shine, that, you know, that the foundation on which you've built that is trying to be responsive to your school and community, and that is exactly what we preach and want to see happen across the district. I know that Board Member Vendil asked the question about what we can do to support you, and I think that it's very clear to all of us that work in the district that, and we're going to be dealing with the budget in short order, that, you know, there are lots of things that are supportive of the type of work that you're trying to do around Second Step, for example, social emotional development of our students, helping students to nurture and maintain their native language, that are things that were built into our budget that we've had to cut this year. It doesn't mean that those are things that we're not going to endeavor to do this year and beyond, but I think it's really important, and I really appreciate sort of the timing of your presentation in the context of our budget conversation later, because I think you've highlighted some of what we're trying to do systematically across the district and how it's living at East End and how it's having an impact at East End. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to report of the secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of April 4th, 2016. Is there a motion? Ms. Vendel, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Are there any questions on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, any board discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes of April 4th, 2017, please signify. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Report of the committees. Curriculum, Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We last met on March 29th, and we had quite a lot to cover in our agenda, so I'm just going to touch upon some of those that we reviewed. We did get an update on the pre-K research that's being done for our district, and that involves a grant with United Way, which is really exciting to hear. And we have asked the chair and the superintendent if we could please add an agenda item or a workshop for the full board to hear about that research work that's already begun. The middle school math update, again, we learned about that research that's already been underway with our math instructors at the middle school level. Again, we were it was brought to our attention that the middle school math textbooks are not being used, and there's been a review that's already started about what math textbooks might be used. And so that, again, is something that we at Curriculum decided to ask if we could have a workshop done as a full board on that topic. We also did a follow-up on questions of policy IHCDA, which is the post-secondary enrollment options. And then policy IKAB, which is student progress reports to parents. Both of those policies are not ready for moving out of committee yet, but they were just begun discussion there. Some of these policies really don't have much change. They're just reviewing them to make sure they're in alignment with our proficiency-based work. And then we did review from Deering High School their senior capstone course proposal, and that was very exciting to hear, and it was along an alignment with also what Portland High School senior capstone course will look very similar to that as well. But it was exciting to have a Principal Waltz there to talk about that particular course. And that was pretty much it. Our next, we are looking at the last week of April, and we don't have a final date yet, just waiting to hear back from all of the curriculum committee members. But at this time, we don't have a definitive date yet. Stay tuned. Yeah,
Thank you. And we are working to get workshops on the agenda on those two items. Moving on to operations, Ms. Davis.
Operations will be meeting on May 9th at 6 in central office.
Finance, Ms. Hattenbuehler.
Probably the business meeting today is going to be a finance committee update, so I think that's sufficient.
Policy, legislative, Ms. Seeliger.
So we had our policy meeting this afternoon at 5:30 here in City Hall, and our next meeting is Tuesday, May 23rd at Cumberland Avenue at 6 p.m. Central Office.
Thank you. And there are no consent items this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any other member concerns? Seeing none, we'll move into old business. Consideration and action to authorize the board chair and superintendent to sign applications for state funding of several schools under the new construction renovation for the major capital construction projects 2017-2018 through the Department of Education School Facilities Division. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Vendel. Would the superintendent speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this past fall, the Maine Department of Education announced that they would be requesting applications for the state major capital school construction program. And those applications are due this Friday, April 14th. As you know, over the fall, we had an assessment done of our buildings and found that we have an expected $320 million in repairs and upgrades that need to happen in our buildings over the next 20 years. And we are in the process also of scheduling a workshop with the board to understand fully the impact of the facilities assessment and begin to figure out how that plays into our CIP planning and all of our other construction work. But based on the assessment and after discussing it with the operations committee, we decided based on my recommendation, to proceed with the development of applications for all 6 of the buildings that were rated as likely candidates of receiving funding by our consultant. The 6 schools are Paths in Casco Bay as a combined building, Portland High School, Longfellow Elementary, Lyseth, Presumpscot, and Reiki Elementary Schools. As everybody knows, all 4 of those elementary schools are also currently under consideration for renovation and reconstruction as part of the buildings for our future program. However, at this time, we don't know the final direction that the Portland City Council will take on the pending bond for the 4 schools that was referred under the buildings for our future program. And regardless of that decision, my recommendation is that we proceed with submitting all 4 elementary schools and the 2 high school projects. Obviously, should the city council approve any of the projects for referendum, and particularly if those projects are then approved by voters, we will be in a position to withdraw the appropriate number of applications. But in the interim, we are, in essence, assuring ourselves of having the opportunity to have those schools be eligible for state funding. However, unlikely it may be that we would get funding for all 6 of those. So with your approval today, that will allow me and the board chair to sign the finalized application so that they can be submitted prior to April 14th.
Are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Morioni?
Well, I already know mostly the answer to this, but I just want the public to be able to hear the answer. So can you explain the process once we submit the application and when we might hear back from the state?
Yeah, and Doug, I know, is here, so help me if I mess it up, but the applications are due on April 14th. We expect that over the course of the next calendar year, so between April 14th and sometime towards June of next year, so June of 18, the state will review all of the applicants and will conduct site visits of the applicants and come up with a new priority list. And so sometime after that, so for about 3 months after that's actually done, there will be an appeal process. So if a school feels that they didn't, that something wasn't taken into consideration appropriately, there will be an opportunity to appeal that. And then the expectation is that sometime in the late summer of 18, the state will have a new priority list. And so, after that priority list is determined, then depending on a number of things, not the least of which is the availability of funding at the state level, the state will begin, in the order of priority, so with the top-ranked school followed by the second and the third and so on down the list, begin to engage with the school and their district around what the solutions would be. So that's where the planning actually begins to actually get those schools rebuilt. And so there's a series of steps that go with that. The first one being sort of, that you're on the list, and then followed by, now you're funded, and then you have to go through the planning process and get additional approvals at the state level, and then after that, begin construction and eventually have the school done. So there is a very elaborate set of steps that follow all of that. So I think it's important to understand that, it isn't that we'll submit the applications on April 14th and then on, June 1st we'll know where we are, and then in September we'll be breaking ground if our schools are the, highest ranked. Even if they are the highest ranked, there's probably 2 to 3 years before we actually get into the first school being, sort of approved for groundbreaking and to begin that work.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Again, just for public's sake, could you let the public know how many times we've applied to the state for these schools?
So I believe that Portland and Paths are brand new. We've not previously applied for them. And for the 4 elementary schools, Paths and Casco Bay and Portland High School, the 2. So the 2 high schools are brand new. We've never applied for those before. Is that right? Okay. And then, you're scaring me, because it could be that we actually submitted and I didn't.
You were scaring me. Are we doing a Paths in Portland?
Oh, no, Paths and Casco Bay. So it was, yeah. Good. Sorry, thanks. Good catch. And then the other one, the 4 elementary schools, this will be the, I believe, 4th time that they are, that we've submitted for those.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of authorizing the board chair and superintendent to sign applications for state funding of several schools under the new construction renovation for the major capital construction projects 2017-2018 through the Department of Education School Facilities Division, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Okay, consideration and action to approve the FY18 budget in the amount of $104,836,238. Is there a motion? Ms. Vendel, seconded by Ms. Hatzenbuehler. And will the superintendent speak to this motion?
I didn't realize we were doing the budget today. Sure, I have 30 pages of comments that I'm going to be making as we approach this. Obviously, this has been a long and arduous process. I would like to start by thanking the team that has worked extremely hard at pulling this together, starting with Alicia Gardner, our Chief Financial Officer, who walked in November, and this was the very first thing that she took on. So Alicia has been tremendous to work with. I think that we have poured over the budget in ways that, you know, we didn't really expect we would need to when we started, but have had to, and I think it's been an extremely productive process. And I think for both of us going forward that we are in a much better situation having gone through this than we would have been if this had been an easy budget, which it wasn't. So obviously the rest of the team, Malia Nally, who is special advisor to me, has helped to sort of shape our process, as well as, you know, really hone in on the messages that we are trying to deliver through the budget process. And then, obviously, Jeannie Crocker, who nothing could ever happen without Jeannie. Her wisdom, her experience, her understanding, her depth of understanding that, you know, far exceeds the number of years that she's been in the district, has been invaluable. And Barb Stoddard has been the, you know, last member of our core team, and Barb's deep understanding of the district procedures, particularly around personnel processes that are obviously involved in a budget this complex. We wouldn't have been able to do this without Barb. So I want to publicly acknowledge those 4 folks, because they've put in a tremendous amount of time, as well as their teams. I know Ann is here as the new budget director. Ann has been, you know, just request after request after request that she's been working to fulfill. So, Ann, thank you very much. Obviously, the principals have been a key part of this process, and I'm humbled and grateful to see so many of them here today. I know that I asked them to make sure that it was known to the board and to the community that this is not my budget. This is, a budget that we've poured over, that we've talked about, that represents both our dreams and our frustrations as an administrative team. And, so I'm very grateful that as many of them are here. I don't know if that's why they're here. They might be here to impeach me. And we'll find out when public comment comes around. But I'm just, whatever it is, I'm grateful that they're here, because it does show that, well, no, wait, let me back up. I wouldn't be grateful if it were impeachment, but I am grateful that they're here because it shows that they're engaged and committed in this process. And so I want to acknowledge all of that. I'm not going to do the presentation that we've done, a number of times, but I do want to very quickly just recap the steps that we've taken in this process. When Alicia opened Pandora's box, she found that just by sort of rolling over our expenses, we were at a 4.5% increase in expenses. And so that was largely driven by our staff adjustments, additional staff, as well as the projected salary and benefit increases that are just a part of doing business. And so that, along with a set of investments that we believed were necessary to help us to move the district forward, things like our technology purchase for the high school, things along those lines, as well as just escalation of costs and transportation and repairs, things along those lines, brought us to a budget that at the time that we sort of turned it over represented a total of $108 million and change. And so, that was in contrast to the previous year's approved budget, which was $103 million. So before we brought that, so before March 7th when I presented the budget, we had, done our work to try to capture what are the key things that we believe need to be in that budget, and also to remove expenses that we felt that we could proceed without. And, so we've walked through that over the course of the many meetings that we've had since March 7th to talk about that. And so, I just want to remind everybody that our filter was, maintaining the student experience largely the way that it currently is, maintaining effective programs, and using that as our filter for decision-making. So when I proposed my budget, it was a bottom line of $107 million, so down from the 108.6 to $107 million and change, and that I'm sorry, 108.2 to $107 million. So, that was reflecting a $1.2 million cut that we had already put in place. Subsequent to, and so that resulted in a expenses of roughly 3% over what they were before, but combined with a significant loss of revenue resulted in a proposed tax increase of 6.5%. So when, that's what I brought to you. When the Finance Committee met to review the budget, they did a tremendous amount of work to understand how we had gotten to that point, and asked at the time that we bring the impact down below 5%. So, that became round 2 of the budget, where we went back and reduced another $1.4 million out of our proposed budget, which brought the tax impact down to 4.7%. And assumed that it would be 3.5% of a tax impact if we got an extra $1 million in state revenue, which is something that, based on our ongoing dialogue with folks that are working in the legislature, we believe is a realistic. So we brought it down to what would be 3.5% tax impact. We did that primarily by cutting across central office departments, so $100,000 from each of our central departments. We removed the high school devices and made some other adjustments, and that's how we reduced that $1.4 million. And so at that point, we came to the city finance committee. So that was the joint school district and city finance committee. And they asked us to reduce further so that the impact would be consistent with the council's stated goal of a 2.5% tax increase, knowing at the time that the city would also be coming with a 2.5% tax increase. So they asked that our budget match the city's in terms of impact. And so that required us to go back and trim roughly another $1 million from our budget. And so the way we did that is by removing the bulk of the investments that we were proposing to make around the comprehensive plan. So, some of the things that I talked about earlier in the context of East End's presentation, things like our investment in native language development for students, our investments in social emotional learning supports across the district were things that we removed from the budget at the same time. And we also made, that's probably the first place where we made significant cuts to schools, primarily around class size reductions at the elementary schools and some additional class size reductions at Portland High School in particular. We also made some ed tech reductions across middle schools and some of our elementary and high schools. And so that brought us down to that bottom line of $104,836,238, which is what we brought to the Finance Committee at the last meeting and was approved by the Finance Committee. I do want to point out, and we're going to have to deal with this during the budget resolutions tonight, that as we were working through this, that the city manager brought his budget forward, and as we reconciled the two proposals, in the city manager's proposal, they had removed crossing guards as a service that the city provides. And so, we are today in the budget that we're going to ask you to approve, we're asking that you make an amendment to add $200,000 into our budget proposal to cover the crossing guard services. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will be done by the district. It may mean that at some point that gets shifted to the city as a chargeback. We have chargebacks for other things, but it needs to be somewhere in the budget. I think that there's consensus on the council as well as on the board that, that's sort of an area that we can't go without, and we need to actually have it covered. So we are in discussions with the city, so we are asking to add that into the budget today. So that kind of brings us to where we are, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and that's it.
Are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Thompson?
So I assume at some point, we have the amount in front of us of 104, and so when we add the 200,000, we need to make the amendment of 105, 036, 238, is that correct?
That is correct, and we will be doing that during board discussion.
Gotcha.
That is the figure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was correct. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Please come to the microphone, state your name and residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Doris Santoro, and I reside at 164 Neal Street in Portland. I'm also chair of the education department at Bowdoin College, a Reiki parent, and a classroom volunteer. And so I was really pleased to contribute to the development of the equity portion of the Portland Public Schools Comprehensive Plan. So as a property owner, I understand that there will be necessary trade-offs in developing a budget that meets students' needs and that is mindful of tax increases. And I'm really grateful to all of your work. It sounds like it was quite painful. I hope that essential equity elements of the comprehensive plan are a priority should the district have access to additional funding. And so I'm going to talk not about the social emotional learning, but I think we heard about why that's so important from Principal Gendron. I'll draw specific attention to the elimination of the new arrivals center, the native language development, the seal of biliteracy, and the .5 world language position. In 2014, Portland Public Schools contracted the Center for Applied Linguistics to conduct an evaluation of the English language learner program in Portland Public Schools. One of the key recommendations was that 2 new arrival centers be established, one for middle school and one for high school. Another key recommendation was that the district, quote, demonstrate the value of multilingualism and multicultural diversity by encouraging the development of oral proficiency and literacy in languages other than English, ensure there are sufficient bilingual resource materials and authentic texts for students who are literate in their native language to access. So I hope we don't have to wait for another 4 years to make these recommendations a reality. Throughout the district, I've only heard enthusiasm about the PPS comprehensive plan. Teachers and staff have lauded the necessary goals to provide, educate, and invest in the people who will address the needs of the whole child and address the pervasive equity concerns across the district while ensuring achievement for all students. Many teachers remarked on how excited they were about the collaborative process of developing and rolling out the plan. I've shared the Portland Public Schools Comprehensive Plan with colleagues from across the U.S. in colleges and in districts. They've remarked that it is one of the finest and most meaningful statements of collective purpose that they have seen. Should more revenue become available, I urge the board to reinstate the positions and programs that were outgrowths of the comprehensive plan. For Portland to have schools that are known for excellence and achievement for all students, we need to invest in our schools. We have a plan, now we need to put the resources behind the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Abbas Ali, and I'm here to talk about Portland Make It Happen. Am I too close to the mic? I'm good. All right. I've been part of Make It Happen for 4 years, and Make It Happen has opened a lot of opportunities for me. When I walked into that door, I knew that I was going into a room full of people who was happy and who who was courageous enough to help me succeed in my 4 years at Portland High School. I'm currently a senior at Portland High School, and I would like to thank Make It Happen for getting me there. As I said, I was part of Make It Happen for 4 years, for the past 4 years. I really think Make It Happen is doing a great job at serving multilingual students. I've seen students who are not doing well in school, like myself, and come to Make It Happen for support. Where would these students go if Make It Happen was not funded? They'll miss a hub of happiness and the great mentors who take their time off of a busy schedule. I'm really grateful for Make It Happen and all the opportunities it gave me. I've only been here for 5 years, and it really helped me improve my English and it opened a lot of doors to me. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm a senior at Portland High School. Abbas just said basically everything, but I'll add something. Well, I've been here for 4 years now, and I'm originally from Rwanda. So as I got here, I struggled with trying to fit in with how school is, because the program here at school is different from my country. So the first time that I met Tim, and Tim Cronin, he asked me to join Make It Happen. At that time I was shy, so I was like, sure, why not? I don't know what it is, but I'll just join. My freshman year, I struggled because I was trying to learn a new language and at the same time trying to keep up with my studies, because they put me... Sorry, that's my mom. They put me in the same class as the English language learners, so they didn't put me in any ELL classes. So I struggled really hard, but being in Make It Happen, they helped me do well in my studies. What I like about Make It Happen is how I would say a week or after 2 weeks, we have to meet with the Make It Happen specialist to see where our studies are and see if we're struggling with any classes. And I feel like it really helps you and puts you on the path to like help you and see what struggles you're facing and like where you need to improve. And I feel like without Make It Happen, not a lot of students will be succeeding in classes, because that's the only place they would go. If the teacher is not available, they would go there and get work done, and it's like a peaceful place to be after school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Todd Ramachili, and I am a retired math teacher from Peaks Island. And thank you for hosting us. I just wanted you to just think about yourself at 14 years old, how you were. Imagine you're transported to, let's say, Burundi. You might have a little French, but not fluent. Your classroom starts in French, and you have no idea what's going on. What's amazing to me about these kids, and I've been with them for 5 years, is that they come here and they very quickly learn to speak English. It always blows my mind how quickly, just like that, because they already know maybe their own language, they know a dialect. I was in the Peace Corps, my kids spoke 5 languages. These kids speak this. We in America, we barely do 1. So they learn to speak very quickly, but it's reading and writing. Reading and writing is really hard. And what this program does is it helps these kids deal with all kinds of stuff, like look, a worksheet, it's just drenched in words. A book, reading Catcher in the Rye. What? That's not their culture, and they have to wade through that. What I love as a math student is taking them through, yes, word problems. A lot of fun. So what it turns them into is determined kids who really want to learn. They work very hard. They keep me sitting in a seat longer than I really should be sitting, and make me stay after school longer than I should. And then they blossom, and they speak already. They learn to read. They learn to write, and then they set their sights. And we're an old state. We're a very old state. I'm the epitome of the average age of our state. I'm 105 years old. I need to be taken care of. And these kids, they want to be nurses, they want to be doctors, they want to work as engineers, they want to start businesses, they want to work in finance. And they will do it, but if this program dies, their chance of surviving is about as good as you or I making it in Burundi or Rwanda as a 14-year-old. So please help to keep it going.
Thank you. My name is Tim Cronin, and I oversee the Make It Happen program. So I want to just take a minute to tell you about some of our realities. And I wish I could transport you all, if I could, to the Portland High School Make It Happen Center, where our site coordinator over here, Emma, who's very quietly sitting over there, but I wish you could just see it, because it's kind of a neat place where it's somewhat of a hub of academic activity, where kids kind of just come, and it's a sense of belonging for them, whereby no matter what, they can come and just kind of unload with all of their trials and tribulations as they're trying to make their way in the world. I think if you think about the charge of trying to help a kid build his or her academic profile, it's pretty considerable. But we're so fortunate in that we have these AmeriCorps site coordinators who are the vast majority of our budget. If you ask me, it's the deal of the century. For the budget, for the district, I think it's $9,000 to get a full-time employee for a year. And if you ask me, some of them are magicians, the vast majority of them are. They come there, and out of the goodness of their hearts, they serve their country, but they're also directly serving these kids. And I think it's considerable, because if you think about walking one student through the whole process of trying to prepare him or her for admission, to secure admission to the college of their choice, and also to secure, importantly, the financial aid, it's considerable. And I think it starts way back in middle school, and our program, fortunately, is right now at Portland's 3 high schools and 3 middle schools. But if you think about getting kids ready so that they can take AP and honors classes, get ready for the SAT, walk through the whole college app process. If you've ever done it with one kid as a parent, you know what you're in for. These guys are magicians, and they're doing it with 25 kids. Now, our kids come here, the vast majority of them, and they may, in fact, have all the support and resources at home, but the truth is many of them have cultural, language, and educational barriers. And our site coordinators are there to level the playing field, so to speak. They can help our kids navigate that landscape in building not only the academic part of their profiles, but also, importantly, the civic part of their profiles. And our AmeriCorps are modeling what success is, and by that I mean not only great students, but great citizens. And a big part of our program is what I've referred to just recently as the X factor. It's somewhat in the gray area. And by that I mean we're trying to make, by default or design, hopefully we're making Portland a lot better place to live. The reason is all these kids get involved by getting involved in things like King Fellows, the Telling Room, Cultivating Community, Maine Youth Court, Ripple Effect, Seals Fit. There's something called Daring Mentoring by a guy who's been serving there, believe it or not, for 3 years pro bono to hopefully help kids succeed and proliferate in middle schools and high schools. to talk about impact, our AmeriCorps site coordinators have now helped 1,800 kids in the last 7 years proliferate. It's not that our kids are at risk, they're only at risk of not reaching their potential or maximizing their potential. Many of our kids have gotten into schools, including elite schools, SMCC, across the board, but they've gotten them in there through their advocacy, their modeling, all of it, and also showing them how to, and actually to conduct themselves as professionals, but also as great citizens. They're already modeling what it's like to be a great citizen. They're serving a year or two of their lives, and I'm not sure they're getting rich, but it's pretty considerable. A big part of our program are the volunteers, guys who are 100 years old, like Todd, right? But, yeah, I'm afraid I'm slipping a little. But believe it or not, there are people who have, they've served with Make It Happen for 7 years, and there's a couple of them, Ann Sawchuk and Cindy Ronsley over at Lincoln Middle School. They're on their second cycle of 7 years. And so they've walked kids to college, helped them write their college essays, driven them to college, you name it. They're there week in, week out, and they call the kids up. Even since they've graduated, they ask me how they are, have you heard of them? And so I think the impact, it's really kind of neat because I don't think it's just a one-way street. I think that, in fact, the students have enriched the lives of not only these volunteers, but all these community partners. There's, believe it or not, we have 35 to 40 partners in the community who want our kids, but we want them too. And if you ask me, Portland's 10 times better off because these partners decided to say, hey, can you send your kids our way? And so I think it's a big deal. Finally, we're faced with some, 45, 50 asylum seekers right now. You've heard about them. You know what's going on with respect to the recent election. You know what's going on with respect to the state and threats of GA disappearing and these kids being on the street. I'm happy to say that Make It Happen is partnering with SMCC, USM, a local lawyer, and just people who are trying to do good things. But 7 asylum seekers volunteered anonymously to put together a video so that they could petition for well-off people or organizations to hopefully help them to secure admission and, funding for college. And so I think that if anyone who've dealt with our students realizes that they're in the presence of grace and dignity, and it's an incredible honor to be even remotely associated with them. So I can't imagine being in your shoes. I think that you have choices that are unbearable. Just you recounting tonight, Superintendent Botana, the process you've been through. I imagine you're here for night after night after night, considering these miserable and brutal decisions. But I wanted to finish by suggesting that you consider Make It Happen to try to be included in the comprehensive plan and budget, because I think it's a great value. I think it comes down to $55,000, and I just, because my math's not so good, I just took out my calculator, and I think it's less than 0.05% of the budget. So if you ask me, it's not a bad deal. That's it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Oh.
Stephen Sharp at Salem Street. I actually want to speak to some new things, new developments in your budget process. But I just want to start with noting that the $1 million, there's $1 million cushion float in your budget. You're gambling on the state of Maine giving us another $1 million. And first of all, you have to understand that may not happen, in which case there'll be more cuts. But the folks on the other side who think that any money we get additional can go to these other programs have to understand that the first $1 million is already accounted for, is already claimed within your budget. And so it's got to be more than $1 million before you're considering any other programs. The other thing is this concept of adding crossing guards. First of all, I'm concerned that it was not in your budget, it wasn't in your plan. First of all, I'm not quite sure why the crossing guard program hasn't been in the school budget ever, why it's always been a city program and funded on the city side has never made sense. It's always should have been in your budget, just like the expo should never have been in your budget, should have always been in the city budget. It's just one of those things. But it's my understanding that the other day the figure was $130,000, and you're being asked tonight to approve $200,000. So I'd like an explanation as to why such a significant difference from what was discussed in the city school finance committee meeting and what you're asking for today. And lastly, I am truly surprised that no one has yet mentioned the fact that the referendum for the budget evaluation approval is going to happen on June 13th and not in May. I'm curious, does the board even know this has been voted on by the city council? And not one member of the board was at the city council meeting, and not one member of the staff was at the city council meeting, at which that and several other school-related items were taking up. And it just surprised me there was no one there. But I think you should be telling people when the referendum is going to be, and it's even in your agenda package here as still being May. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, is there any board discussion? Ms. Hatzenbuehler.
I'd like to comment on the budget later, but first I'd like to move to amend the budget amount to $105,036,238.
Is there a second? Ms. Thompson? All right, are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Thompson?
Can we clarify the question that arose from a community member from going from 130 to 200,000, and where the new figure came from? Or same figure?
Yes, so the current budget for that service is somewhere in the neighborhood of 130, 140,000 in the city's budget. Last year, when there were discussions between the city and the school district on that topic, the school district sought external applications, basically subcontract, or a contractor outside that would take over that responsibility if it came to the school system. And so that there was a proposal for $185,000, and so that was part of the basis for the $200,000. The other piece is what hasn't been said is that from the city's perspective, one of the reasons why they are looking to no longer do that is that when staff doesn't show up, their solution for that, in order to be able to provide the service, is that they pull somebody off of the traffic duty. So somebody who's out, writing tickets or, putting on boots. And I'm sure that people will be disappointed to find out that they will be out there doing that instead of crossing kindergartners, as cute as they are, across the street. But the city manager estimated that they lost $60,000 in revenue as a result of having to pull people off of the meter duties to substitute for missing crossing guards. So the $130,000 is $130,000 for the people that are currently in their budget, but not for the costs that are added to them as a result of that. So that's how we settled on the $200,000. We also had done some additional work internally. If people, if we were to take over that service, trying to fit them into our current base contract, no pun intended, the base pay would go up significantly from what it currently, from what those folks are currently paid in the city's system. So, it's unrealistic for us to just expect to sort of take those people, pay them at the same rate in our collective bargaining world. And so the $200,000, again, is, I don't know definitively what the bottom line is, but we needed to come up with a bottom line, and so that's where we came up. It's a combination of the $180,000 that our potential vendor quoted us, the $130,000, $140,000 that the city currently spends, and revenue that it loses, and the potential for, if we were to do it internally, what would it cost us to be able to run that service in our, in our budget with our contractual agreements.
Thank you, and I guess, So 60,000 in revenue, that's the first time I've heard that. It's interesting because I think there's been numerous times where children have been hit by cars. So it's interesting to hear the 60,000 of revenue, because I think that when we put our children and our students out, the expectation is that we'll keep them safe. And so $60,000 for is just a little bit crazy to me, but because obviously the students' price is, you can't put a price on that. And we've had many, many instances. And my concern as well is with regards to them not showing up when it was on the city side. So do you see, with regards to contracting it out, that we would have more reliability in the sense of someone actually being there, other than, you or Jean or somebody going out and becoming a crossing guard? This sounds as though it might be more predictable and maybe a safer option, making the best of what we've been given? Again,
first let me say that both Jean and I do cross kids across Portland on Mondays and on Tuesdays, so we actually do have a little bit of experience with this. Besides that, I don't know exactly where we would wind up with it. I think, and this is, before my time here, had done the assessment of the potential for somebody as a contractor taking it over. Obviously, we would have to build in safeguards to make sure that they would have substitutes that they could draw on when people don't show up for those jobs. And I think that, that definitely would be a concern. It's a concern now. It would be a concern if we're running it. It would be a concern if a contractor is running it. I think, and I, have started to have discussions with the city on this issue. I know that the city experiences frustration when, as a school system, we change our our arrivals and departures, and don't give proper notice to to the city because, they've got people expecting to be there at 2:30, and then that day we let out at 1:30. So, we definitely, whether it's internally managed or whether it's managed by a contractor or continues to be managed by the city, need to do a better job of communicating on those things. So, I think this will be a productive conversation. I think we will, I'm 100% convinced that the city doesn't want kids getting hit, as they cross Washington Avenue any more so than we do. We're all very deeply committed to making sure that, that we get kids across the street safely, and we will come up with a solution that makes sense and, could potentially cost more than what is currently spent in the budget, but not necessarily more than what is spent and lost on the other end.
So I just, for the public as well, in addition to the reduction that we're receiving from the state, have there been other costs? You've mentioned the crossing guards. Have there been other costs that we've incurred from other cost centers that we haven't had before, such as, the maintenance department and things like that, that they've, additional costs that have shifted from the city to the schools? Have there been additional?
Yes, but that is not a negative cost for us. Those are dollars that we have historically paid to the city as a chargeback or, something from our budget being transferred to the city's budget for, for example, Dave Onis, who everybody knows that is, extremely active in all of our buildings. Kathy Alvis, who many of you also know, that we've been paying for their salaries or portions of their salaries out of the district's budget. So those services are transferring back to the district, and we obviously need to work with the city to make that transition smooth, but there's no additional cost that comes from that.
Yeah, I just wanted you to clarify that, because what some of the lines paying out are now coming in, and so I think that people get confused with regards to the costs that are showing up that weren't there before, but in your point, it was on another line item where we were paying it out, so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear as well. Thank you.
Any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the amendment? Seeing none, is there any board discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of amending the budget amount to $105,036,238, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Okay, back to the main motion. Consideration and action to approve the FY budget in the amount of $105,036,238. We are on board discussion. Is there any discussion? Ms. Thompson?
I'm just wondering if the superintendent, I think there became a little confusion for the board and some people that may have been following along, that we had the superintendent's budget that was presented, and then we had some reductions which were part of the superintendent's budget, but that weren't there prior, and then there were further reductions. So things like the Make It Happen, you had proposed for us to take it away from necessarily grant funding and the unreliability of funding that program and putting it over as part of the comprehensive plan. So in essence, it's a reduction from your budget, but we're not, I guess, doing away with the program per se. I mean, it's still a challenge to find the funding. But I think some of those confusions have come in for people understanding that it looks like we're reducing, but they were things you added and then reduced to bring us back to square one, and then we reduced again. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So that's correct. The Make It Happen program has, as you heard today, has been in place for a number of years, and it has been a struggle for Grace Valenzuela, for Tim Cronin, for the team to raise money every year to pay for people like Emma, who, cost us $9,000 a year, and, give back tons more than that. So this was, in recognition of the fact that we shouldn't have a vital service like that be sort of, flying on a hope and a prayer. So we did include that in the budget, again, consistent with the comprehensive plan strategy of making sure that, all of our children, all of our students have an adult or more that knows them well and that can help them. And so I think what you heard today from Make It Happen, they talked about Roy Chatterjee's program at Deering that was also a proposed component of my proposed budget that is no longer there. But those are, again, investments that we were attempting to make because they are consistent with what we agreed to were our goals in the comprehensive plan. And so now they're no longer there, so I think that that's why they're here.
And I just, as a follow-up to the superintendents versus the reductions and I think that there's been some discussion about all of the positions being added to central office to support the comprehensive plan. Those have all been stripped out. And even so, I think for the public, it's important for them to know from FY17 to 2018, you actually, according to calculations, are down $535,882. Salaries are lower, benefits are lower, and overall total is lower. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and I think it's also important to, so that's roughly a 10% reduction in the central administration staffing cost, and that's with, costs increasing just by virtue of, contracts going up and things along those lines. So it really is, in excess of 10% reduction in the staffing costs at central office.
And across the board, principals, obviously, and the assistant principals came to the plate, and they took an additional 10% reduction, is that correct?
So they took a 10% reduction in the per capita allocation that schools are given. Part of our budget process is to give schools anywhere from $100 to $300 per student, with elementaries getting less and high schools getting more. And as we went into the final phase, the third phase of cuts, principals volunteered that particular cut, which is about $100,000 less in school-based discretionary funding.
Any other discussion on the motion? Ms. Morioni and then Ms. Hudson-Buehler.
Can you just explain for myself and for the public, again, what was brought up by one of our community members around what will happen if we do possibly get another $1 million from the state?
So, as was pointed out by Mr. Scharf in his comments, the current budget that we are asking you to approve assumes that we will get an additional $1 million in revenue from the state. Again, when you say assumes, it sounds like, don't know what you're talking about. We believe that that's a very reasonable expectation based on, the fact that the governor's budget proposed, some very radical changes to the EPS that, there's very little appetite for in the legislature, and so we have been given assurances that that those changes that were proposed will not go through, and that you should be able to sort of plan on what you would get under normal EPS circumstances. And so that $1 million reduction that we are still assuming we will have is what we had assumed all along, just based on our enrollment, on the mill rate and so on, that we assumed that we would stand to potentially lose $1 million. And so, we don't think that we're going to lose $2 million, we think we're going to lose $1 million. So, having said that, the first $1 million that we get, so if in fact we do have that reinstated, correctly cannot be dedicated to any additional programming, so we can't bring back, any of the things that we've cut. That money goes to sort of, pay for what's already been assumed in the budget. If we don't get it, then we will have to go back and cut another $1 million in programs and services. But again, we think that this is a safe assumption, and, the city council, in our conversations with the finance committee, concurs, and so that's with that confidence that we've moved forward and put that into an assumption in our budget.
Follow up to that. Can you also explain when we think we may hear from the state? What your prediction is on our assumption?
I'm probably the last person to be able to make that assumption because I've only been here, this is my first budget season, and it's been a jolly one at that. So I don't know, late June.
And another follow-up to all of it is, can we also tell the public about how the June vote was decided upon without our board knowledge? Thank you.
So, that was a decision that was made at the last council meeting. There had been, and several of the board members were at a previous joint finance committee where that subject had been discussed, and I think, I represented very, forcefully that, the school district did not agree with moving to a June referendum, that, it changes the dynamics in ways that we can't predict. Maybe it won't have any impact, but it could potentially have a very negative impact, and so we were not in favor of it. We did not know that it was being considered on, that Wednesday, last week. So, and, in fact, had talked to city staff, minutes before the council meeting, and, they didn't know about it. And when I talked to them the following morning and I said what happened, they didn't know that it was going to happen either. So I'm not 100% sure how it came to pass, but we had no knowledge that it was on the agenda. Otherwise, somebody would have been here to advocate on that.
Ms. Hatzenbuehler.
First of all, I guess I'll just piggyback on the referendum question. I think that it highlights, I think this budget as a whole highlights some of the great work that the superintendent and administrative staff have done in conjunction with the city. I believe that we wouldn't have been able to as cohesively get to a tax burden without that joint work. I think that we've also highlighted some places where there continues to be some breakdown in communication with the two bodies, and I think that continuing to look at those issues and speaking openly and freely with the city would be of great value to the city as a whole, but specifically the district, in being able to, A, predict costs, and to have some autonomy over our referendums. I mean, that was a real eye-opener for us. So I am hopeful. I think there's a ton of potential there. There's really no barriers or boundaries to that being a problem. I think it's a matter of making it a priority, and which I know that it is. So I feel confident that we'll continue to probably run into little bumps as we go, but I feel confident that the issues are identified and will continue to be addressed in a productive way. I want to say, first of all, that I think it's extraordinarily valuable to have a superintendent who has framed the budget in the way that you have. I will say that speaking from an integrated team perspective, it is very valuable to the district, and it's an effective way to govern, and I appreciate that. This was a brutal, brutal budget, and to be a first-year superintendent, a first-year finance director, I think that you should be very proud of the work that you've done and the lessons that you've learned along this path. And I'm very grateful to the principals, assistant principals, and other people in the district who've worked on this. It's an integrated collective effort, and there is no fun way to cut the amount that this budget has had to be cut, and I appreciate the learning that's been done and the decisions that have been made. I also want to thank my colleagues on the board. I think that there's been a lot of thoughtful, this board cares about its budget. It cares about the programs. It cares deeply about what this district looks like, and I hold all of the questions and the comments to be very valuable to me and to this process. So I appreciate how hard this board has worked on this. And we've met twice as much this year as we have in past years. And so that should be acknowledged and appreciated. And as a chair, I really do appreciate that. And so I am very enthusiastic about moving this budget along.
Any other board discussion on the motion? Okay, Ms. Seeliger?
I just wanted to, comment about my concerns about the cuts to the fashion marketing program, PATHS, and how it affects the creatives, artists, retailers, means traditional craftspeople, handiworkers. When I first ran for office, my platform included supporting tech programs and the arts, so I'm dismayed and disturbed that the budget gets rid of the fashion marketing at PATHS. I think it targets girls in the tech school, non-traditional, non-conforming students, artists, females, and Muslim and refugee communities who have taken an interest in that program in recent years. By cutting one position, we're effectively removing the entire program and its growing connection to the new Mecca fashion program, clothing upcycling, and main fashion industry. Majority of female work in Portland is service and retail work, so I think this cut is short-sighted. It's also one of few opportunities for students to receive direct job training and skills out of high school, before graduating high school. I was hoping that we could have cut extracurriculars, particularly sports, to make up for this one position cut, since we have nonprofits, booster clubs, community orgs that can help pick this up. And while I was glad to see that this request was met to cut some from co-curriculars, I was upset to see that the fashion marketing at PATHS was still not saved. Because of this, I have serious concerns about supporting this budget. Thank you.
Other comments? Ms. Morioni?
Sorry, I've already spoken, but I just want to say that to our audience members that did speak about Make It Happen, our mentoring, our Seal about Literacy, the work that we had done on the comprehensive plan, thanks to the superintendent and staff and all of our teachers. It's a sad day, honestly. I mean, we had done so much work and so much enthusiasm around finally getting our comprehensive plan collectively with our community, around with our teachers, our new superintendent. This is, again, it's never an easy process, but I'm going to commit right now to all of you who are hearing me that I'm a huge advocate for those things that have been cut, including, like I said, the Make It Happen and mentoring programs in our schools. I have been a Make It Happen volunteer for the past few years, and I have watched kids walk across the aisle and get their diplomas. Oftentimes, I believe because of that, not because of me, but because of their hard work. And And so I am a champion of that. I won't hold up this budget tonight simply because, as Ms. Hudson-Buehler pointed out, it's a labor of hard work, so many levels, and to support the work of our superintendent, I'd like to get this moving forward. But if we do get, and I'm hopeful that we get any more than $1 million from the state, God willing, we would be able to put back things like the fashion marketing program, but also, most importantly for me, the comprehensive plan work and our seal of biliteracy, incredibly important as well. So, and it's with heavy heart that I will vote in favor of this, but not willingly. Thanks.
Any other comments? Ms. Davis?
I echo Ms. Morioni's feeling that of appreciation, and the board has expressed it, the appreciation for the work that's gone into this budget, the dedication of the staff in problem solving. What is always a challenging set of choices, and that's what a budget is it is a roadmap and a set of choices that we make. And different people have very different feelings about the amount that we should spend, just as it happens at home, and different feelings about the choices that one may make and how they choose to spend their money. This budget represents, a group effort to come to a point of making choices. And I think that we all have to respect that there are different ways, different people might solve that problem differently. It has been a very difficult budget process for me. I'm an educator. I have worked in education my entire career. I support education. I do not want people to assume that a vote on a budget is about supporting a superintendent or a school system or teachers, or students. It is really a vote about the choices made and the ability for an individual board member to come to a place of comfort, either to vote yes, or a place of discomfort to vote no. And I think that that needs to be understood. This budget, after a great deal of deliberation for me, I am not able to support the choices that are included, all of them. Enough of them that I am comfortable in voting yes. And so I will be voting no. I think that what I would like to talk about is the future, because very clearly we have a commitment to implementing a comprehensive plan. But the path to implementing that comprehensive plan cannot be to simply run our budget up even farther. This district for the past several years has worked very hard to try and bring our budget to a financial footprint that had acceptability at the council level and within our community and was affordable for our residents, all of our residents. And there are some residents who, taxes go up $200 and it doesn't make any difference at all. That's a cup of coffee. And there are other residents who will tell you that that's a choice between staying in Portland, medication, a number of very, very painful choices. So there are painful choices on both sides. I think what we need to face as a board is that we need to look at how we are doing education in Portland. And we may have to touch some of those very difficult areas which we have avoided, but which my constituents are bringing to me and saying, why do we have this many schools? Why do we have 3 high schools? Have you thought about merging? Have you thought about doing this really differently? Not just differently around the edges, because I think the days of doing it differently around the edges and maintaining a budget that's affordable are running out. And I think that in the future years, it is really going to take a very courageous look on the part of staff and the board at how we deliver education in Portland to actually reach the goals of that comprehensive plan. Because it is not going to be spending our way to that plan. It's going to be the same staff and different results, doing different things, eliminating some things that we've been doing for ages. And everyone in education knows this. We always just add things. We rarely kind of get rid of stuff. It's hard to let go of that stuff we've been doing forever. But there may be some things where we really need to do that. There may be some things where we need to stop assuming that, the way we have delivered it in the buildings we've delivered it is the way we should do it for the rest of this century. And we need to look at how we might actually unpack that and rework it for the future, not just replicate the past. So I look forward to that. That's exciting and challenging work. I don't like it when we talk about difficult budgets, because budgets are simply a puzzle of choices that we have to make. They are challenging, and they call into question our values. This one, I have really struggled with my values and what's important. What should be in a budget, what are the choices you make? And hence, I do come down voting no tonight with great reluctance. But I look forward and hope that this board and the staff and the superintendent will commit to really working to the work of prioritizing our investments, to develop a budget that really provides that roadmap to the comprehensive plan, same staff, different results, doing school perhaps very differently, but affordably, so that we are thinking about education differently in Portland, and we're enabling our taxpayers to be able to stay and to afford their cups of coffee and their medications, while still providing a world-class education for our students, because I believe we can do that. But I think it's going to be possibly a very different kind of education than that we provided, certainly when I was in schools and over the past decades. So with that, I think we have a challenge ahead of us. I think that we're up to it. I look forward to it. But tonight, I will be voting no on this budget. Thank you.
Ms. Mendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess I'm going to throw in some terms and that I think my colleague, after her comments, would probably disagree with in terms of the challenging budget. This has certainly been a challenging budget process. We have new leaders, a very scary state funding scenario, and what I see is a bottom line on what is the tax impact on the local level that just kept going down and down as the process moved forward, making it that much harder for all of us to kind of come around to seeing the cuts as it was introduced to us through the superintendent's budget, the finance committee budget, and then the second finance committee budget following feedback from the city, asking us to bring it down to 2.5. So despite this scenario, this situation, the advocate in me is, very much, wanting to, kind of change the paradigm about talking about raising revenue. That conversation is, been very clear with the city that, we're limited. And so we have our marching orders as a school board. And I appreciate all of the work that the superintendent and staff has done to help us get there. And I will echo that for me, the biggest disappointment in this budget has been the comprehensive plan elements that we are, $410,000, like 0.5% of the overall expenditures. And, this is the reason why I ran 8 years ago, to be a part of the district. It's to ensure that, there's equity, that all students, regardless of where they come from, have access to services, that they are, that there's a caring adult in the classroom at the building level, that they have access to resources, and that they can live to their potential. And that is, I feel like we have done a great job in our school district with working with where we're at, and yet we are so close. We are so close to really pulling the lever on things that really can turn the dial for students. And so I have to live with that. We're not including the strategies in our budget, and I have confidence that there will be other ways that staff will try to bring in outside funding to try and help this work as we transition to adopting these strategies. And I also want to say that despite the comprehensive plan not being in there, the investment in high school one-to-one tech devices that has been a district priority we're not continuing on that investment. We're maintaining what we currently have. That's been really hard for me to stomach. But there's so many other things that I can also talk about in terms of individual positions, things that have been, incredible for our community, that are not in here, that are or that have been reduced. And that's where I'm just going to say that I can live with my vote with supporting this budget, because I don't think that this ends here, because we're approving our vote means not just a support for the schools and the superintendent, it's a support for our process to move forward so that, one, our employees have certainty around employment, that we can continue to make plans for the summer, for summer learning, for the fall, I think it's really important that we vote for this budget, because if we don't, then it sets our district back even further. The staff that has been dedicated to working with us for the last couple of months, they're going to be continuing to work with us as we're trying to close down school. And that is a scenario I just don't ever want, us to be faced with. The board work is really important, the district budget is really important, but our students are really important. And, I'm voting on this so we can continue this process. It's not perfect. My hope is that we have additional state funding that will not just make us whole, but will allow us to reinvest. But ultimately, we need to continue our work in the district, and so I'm happy to support this budget, to continue that process.
Other board comments? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. So like my other colleagues on the board have said, I want to thank the superintendent and staff for all the work getting the budget together. And the principals as well, of course. Clearly, it's been a difficult one, challenging, whether we want to use that word or not. It has seemed challenging, even for me as a new board member, seeing the process for the first time from this side of the room. A couple of weeks ago, I was able to watch a lecture, a webinar. Shout out to Doris for sending me the link. It was Professor Charles Payne in the University of Chicago. He was talking about some of the challenges in public education, specifically in poverty neighborhoods and socioeconomic disadvantaged students. And one of the statements that he made was that one of the most destructive dialogues that social scientists have allowed themselves to be dragged into is answering questions of do resources matter or does money matter? And clearly it does. Clearly it does. I'm a resident taxpayer here in Portland. I'm a parent of an elementary school student. I don't want to be dismissive of the challenges that our personal budgets have at home. I know that when I get my escrow statement at home, my wife and I have to make serious adjustments to our lifestyles. But I don't lose sleep over that. You know, I lose sleep at night when I hear about homeless students that attend our schools. I hear about food insecurities. I hear about kids that go to school and they're not ready to learn. And then we're talking about our comprehensive plan where we set a goal and a challenge to ourselves to help these disadvantaged students and to help our staff manage these challenges. And then we have $400,000 that keeps us from it. So I'm going to support this budget, but like Ms. Van Dilscher said, I'm hopeful that we step up to the challenge in the future and that we continue our goal or our vision to address that comprehensive plan and to put, you know, some shovels in the ground and literally build it up. Because if we just keep kind of spinning our wheels and we keep looking at, you know, the scorecard for the district and we see these achievement gaps and we see graduation rates and the district averages at 84% of our students, but if you're Latino, that number goes down to 62%. If you're Asian, you know, this is ridiculous. It really is. It's 2017. So again, I look forward to supporting this budget, but even more so, I'm looking forward to the road ahead and how we tackle the problems that we've been talking about for so long, and that we really start making sense in our decisions. Thank you.
Any other board comments? Mr. Eder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I sat down at the dais today, it's been a very difficult process of working through my feelings on this budget. When I sat down, I had no idea how I would vote. I too am disappointed about many of the loss of many of the many great programs, in particular the fashion marketing program. I know fully 1/3 of us on the board were fighting to keep that program, and that I can't say that I felt heard on that. Offered solutions, but then there was another round of cuts. And so it hasn't been a perfect process, but I know that my colleagues have worked very hard on this budget, and it's been a very difficult budget. And it's a difficult decision for me either way. But I will reluctantly be supporting the budget tonight. And I hope that we will stay committed to restoring that program. I really didn't hear what I thought were valid reasons for cutting the fashion marketing program. So I'd like to continue to work with my colleagues in the administration to address those issues and to restore that program. And thank you.
So for my comments, I feel as though we've all kind of been saying our pieces over and over again now. Having sat in on the Finance Committee meetings throughout the process, and I wanted to thank the Finance Committee for working so deliberatively on this and bringing it back to us, and the superintendent and the executive team for putting this together over and over and over and over again. I think, you know, this is my fourth budget cycle, and it's the first budget cycle where we had to make cuts. And so it was a very different budget cycle than anything I've seen so far. And one thing that I learned is how much of a challenge it is that when we have to make these decisions about what are priorities and what may be expendable for now, how very differently that looks in each of our eyes, and how challenging it is to come round to a collective agreement. So I respect every question that has been asked throughout this process. I respect the sleepless nights that I know members have had, in getting around and grappling with the difficult portions of this budget. And I respect the decision that every member on this board has to come to tonight internally. I think another sort of theme of the deliberations throughout this cycle is that we really do seem to be committed to the comprehensive plan. I think we've seen, kind of a list of what that looks like in a budget proposal. And I think we've had conversations around how those would be our first investments if we were able to make them. Sentiments expressed by Ms. Vendel, Mr. Rodriguez. If we do end up with more funding this year, I would support going directly back to that list of priorities. So I will be supporting this budget tonight, looking at it as a foundation to build from and honoring the work that has gone into it this year. So, any other board discussion before we vote? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the FY18 budget in the amount of $105,036,238, please signify. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with the students in the majority and Ms. Seeliger and Ms. Davis in the negative. Oh, I'm sorry. All those opposed. Ms. Seeliger and Ms. Davis. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Okay. Moving on to consideration and action to revise policy JL, local wellness policy. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Would the superintendent like to speak to the motion?
I'm going to call on Jane to speak to the local wellness policy. She's she's completely versed in all aspects of why we're making these policy changes, and so thank you, Jane, for being here.
You're welcome. In the year 2005, the USDA asked each of the local school districts to create a wellness policy. And the wellness policy was created and approved here in 2006. As part of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010, they asked us to go back and revise this policy. We finally got a final rule in June of this year to amend the wellness policy in 2 different directions. The 2 pieces of the policy that we're requesting to change is the paragraph on nutrition promotion, which states that we shall support strategies that promote healthy choices in the cafeteria. And the second paragraph being food and beverage marketing, that we would only permit marketing for foods that would be sold on school grounds. And these would be, we also have this main stature that states the same thing. So the changes in this policy are limited to those 2 items that we're requesting for today.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, we will call for public comment on the motion. Seeing none. Is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. I just want to ask the superintendent administratively on the local wellness policy, although it's stated in the executive summary, when I compared the policy for policy, typically when we have a new policy come towards us, it shows us the track changes. And so if I looked at the draft, the nutrition promotion and the food and beverage marketing don't show up as a track change. So it was good that it was cited in the executive summary. But we show like a track change, for instance, of showing that there was a reference to the subject to the commercialism in the schools policy, but that whole section was added, and the nutrition promotion, that whole section was added, and then the reference to, at the cross-reference at the end of the policy, the KHB, I mean, that shows a track change as well. So I guess I would ask in the future if we could just, when we have changes to policies, if we can show all track changes, so that way we don't have to compare them, and I'm glad that we had the executive summary, because that brought me to the focal point. So that's just more administrative request. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of revising policy JL, local wellness policy, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consideration and action to request that the city manager reallocate $1.2 million in his recommended CIP funds to be targeted for Casco Bay High School's renovation construction of the Great Room new entrance. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Hatzenbuehler. Will the superintendent speak to the motion?
Indeed. So when Casco Bay was asked to expand from 280 to 400 students, there was a master building plan that was developed that would bring the school to the level of educational programming that was consistent with the needs of the expanding student body and consistent with the school's unique curriculum. The building study was conducted by PDT Architects and estimated about $34 million in programmatic improvements and changes, capital improvements that needed to happen, and to date, very few of those improvements have been made. In December, when, after the Operations and Finance Committee met, we submitted as a district, we submitted a capital improvement plan to the city for over $5 million for the 2018 CIP. The manager's recommendation, which was adopted by the City Finance Committee, was for roughly $2.5 million. So it was substantially smaller than what we had submitted. During the review process, we, along with representatives from Casco Bay, Principal Pierce, advocated reinstating the proposal for the building of what Casco Bay lovingly calls the Greater Great Room, and which in the architect plans is a new entrance. So we've now lovingly taken to calling it the Greater Great Room and new entrance to Casco Bay. And so we requested that be reinstated. The Finance Committee held to the manager's recommendation of $2.5 million, but encouraged us to take the step that we're taking today, which is to identify projects that we would remove from the recommended CIP list in order to be able to include the Casco Bay project. So we have reviewed the approved projects, and we are recommending $1.15 million in projects that we believe can be postponed without significant impact on the district's upkeep and maintenance. Among those projects are the new windows at Deering High School, which, while we believe they're needed, they were not included in our original request to the city. They were part of the 2019 CIP request, along with another $8 million worth of projects that are currently sitting in our 2019 request. There were also several engineering reports that were approved by the council that we believe can also be postponed to the 2019 CIP request. And then finally, we have proposed to remove the upgrade to the district's phone system, after deliberating with our IT department, we believe that there are cheaper short-term solutions that will allow us to upgrade our phone service so that we can actually get them fixed when they're broken, but, we will not all, and, we have some old phones that will need to be replaced, but our current estimate is that we can do that within our operational budget for roughly $60,000. So, we've discussed the plans with the city manager, with the mayor. I believe that former board member Ali will be sponsoring an amendment to the city's CIP request to reflect the addition of the greater great room and new entrance at Casco Bay in exchange for the elimination of these other projects when the council meets on this on the 24th. So with that, I would, I don't know if there are any questions. I know that Brooke Orner is here from Casco Bay. As many of you know, Principal Pierce is in Detroit with the junior class for their junior journey, but Brooke has sat with us, and I know that she'll speak during the public comment, but also can help us with any questions that you might have. So,
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion?
Hello, as Superintendent Botana said, I'm Brooke Teller, and I'm a teacher at Casco Bay High School, and I'm here on behalf of Derek Pierce and the rest of our Casco Bay family. The Great Space is a beloved space for us. I've been at Casco Bay for 10 years, and so I came in when we only had 9th through 11th grade. We hadn't even entered our 12th grade class, and I was thinking earlier when we heard about the Read Across America and my early reading self, it's much like Clifford the Big Red Dog, and we certainly have grown and grown, and we are bursting at the seams in this space that is the hub of our everyday activity. Students are there from the beginning of school to the end of school. We have no auditorium, we have no lunchroom. This is the space that serves that purpose, as well as for our Wednesday meetings where the whole school gathers to celebrate student successes and hear announcements and have outside organizations come in and present to us. So this is certainly very important to us, and I just want to thank you all for your consideration of this project.
Thank you.
Brooke, sorry about the last name.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Jake McNally of Montreal Street, and I appreciate your hard work in this difficult budget season, and thank you for giving this sort of unique and urgent issue the attention it deserves. I was a public school teacher for 19 years in 6 different schools in Illinois, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and at Deering and Casco Bay High School. And I've never seen a space in a school get used as hard as the Great Space gets used. And there's one specific ritual that I want to talk about that takes place in the Great Space, and that's school meeting. It happens every week, and the entire school comes in for student performances, student presentations, and in my years in public education, the events that I've witnessed in that space have been some of the most powerful, transformative, inspiring events in my career. And the fact of the matter is, right now, the school just doesn't fit in that Great Space. And my experience in my 5 years at Casco Bay High School was that it is crucial to invite everyone in and give everyone a place and create this atmosphere where a student will stand up and give a 20-minute public policy presentation or perform an original piece of music. So I thank you for your consideration of this issue, and I, request that you support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Stephen Sharp at Salem Street. I would say this is something, the train has basically left the station on this. At last week's city council meeting, at which no member of the school board or staff was at, this was considered, an amendment was made and was seconded for purposes of discussion. And after discussing it, not one member of the city council voted to change the capital improvement plan to include this. One of the main concerns raised was that Paz and Casco Bay is one of the schools that has been submitted to the state list for consideration, and if such, the entire building will be torn down, theoretically, and built as a new building. And so why would we spend anywhere from $1.2 million to renovate or build a stairway mainly? That's what most of the cost would be building a stairway to a building that we may tear down in a couple of years. And that was the thinking that was described. I'm not sure if it was at a school board operations meeting or elsewhere. The other concern that was raised is, can the building actually handle the weight of 400 students and staff? Is the floor actually designed for that kind of weight? Quite frankly, it's my understanding that the floor flexes just at school board meetings when they were held there, when large amounts of people were there. So that was the other concern that's been raised, is I don't think the cost has been adequately addressed. I think it would cost a lot more than just $1.2 million to make it a safe space. And just finally, the reference to the Deering High School windows, those were on a previous CIP budget, in a previous budget, and got removed, I believe, so that the Reiki ramp work could be done. And so those have been in the pipeline for a long time. We talk about how our schools are falling apart and we've got to spend all these millions of dollars. Yet something as simple as replacing the windows at Deering High School, which needs to be done, gets left off the table every time somebody wants to do something else. And that is a simple fix to make Deering High School a much more energy efficient building and much more school-friendly building, and yet you're willing to sacrifice that to build a stairway at Casco Bay High School /Paz.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, is there any board discussion? Ms. Thompson.
Well, in full disclosure, I'm a parent of a Casco Bay High School senior, and I have to say that there is magic that happens in that building. I had a child that went to Portland High School, and great experience. In Casco Bay it's just so unique and so different, and the inclusion there and the sense of belonging, and as the superintendent alluded to, the great space. And just for an example, when the seniors are applying to college and they get their acceptances, the whole school comes together and the kids do moving on up day, and the whole school cheers for them. And I know that my daughter was so excited to have her peers cheering her on, and she posted on the wall all the colleges that she got accepted to. And they have these events that are really reinforcing each other to succeed and really reinforcing each other that they're there for each other. So that spot has so much more meaning than just a room. I do believe that I do want us to think about the reinforcement of that floor. I know with dances, school dances, when they all get excited and they start hopping around, it gets a little bit of flex going on. But maybe we can come up with another solution, but that is a concern for me. And maybe we can come up with another idea of how we address that. With regards to the CIP, we've had a lot of things that have been in the pipeline for a long time, and we move them along, and it's a guide for us as to the needs. And as the superintendent alluded to, we have over $300 million of needs, and that CIP list, since I've been on the board for 11 years, has evolved, and we've had to make choices where needs arise, and this is certainly one. We've asked the Casco Bay staff and the building there to take on more and more students without providing the resources there. They make really great use of what they have, whether it be for furniture or they just really go above and beyond, and they don't ask for a lot, to be honest. They don't have a lot of things that the other schools have, as Ms. Teller alluded to. So I will support this 150%, and I'm very excited to see it come to fruition. We have talked about the report as well. We brought parents together, and again, another example of bringing the community together and coming up with a plan. And this has been talked about now, I believe, for at least 5 years. So it's not new. And again, the school has taken on more students without us being able to expand for them. So I'm very excited to vote for this. Thanks.
Any other board discussion? Ms. Davis and then Ms. Morioni.
This is another difficult choice, and it is a choice because a number of the items that that the city manager had recommended are things that have been on our CIP for some years and have been pushed back. The proposal before us is not something that's included in the $322 million of the Sebago Technics Plan, which we still haven't, as a board, actually had a presentation and understand. I'm uncomfortable voting without the board actually knowing what is ahead of us. Having watched Casco Bay from the very beginning, it was put in PAS because there was space there at that point in time. There was no commitment originally to that particular space for that particular program for the rest of its life. We have expanded it there with the goal of eliminating the waiting list, and we haven't. And I really have questions if we continue to run a waiting list and that space, such as it is inadequate for more than, because we did have a commitment as a board to having no waiting list. And that we seem to be able to back away from, and I'm uncomfortable with that because I think if our students and our families are telling us that this is a model that they want, then we need to look at how do we provide that model. And I have real questions about paths being the right place for that model long-term. And the approach to Casco Bay from the very beginning has been kind of patchwork. And you can see it when you walk in, the leftover chairs and the thises and that's, and sort of, it's like a yard sale approach. I think it's time, this is a very successful program, I would argue that it's time that we actually have a real long-term plan and put the program in a building that actually meets its needs, that is not band-aided together, that is, whether it is through the state or through looking at our other facilities or other facilities that might be available in the in the city to house this program. I guess I'm uncomfortable. This to me feels like yet another Band-Aid. And I am very concerned about that floor because I have sat at board meetings when we had hundreds of people testifying against the cuts for adult ed, and that floor moved, and I was very concerned. I'm not sure that the building was really designed for that purpose. That was a meeting room for maybe 100 people. It was never designed to be what it is proposed to be used for by the addition of this entrance. I think this is one as compelling as the arguments are, and I understand the magic. But what I will say is the magic is not the building. The magic is what is happening between staff and students. It is that interaction. And the space can certainly help, but it is not the space that is causing that to happen. It is the commitment and the belief that the staff have about their students and the interaction and the relationships that are built. I would really urge us to not change this, to actually honor our commitments to the other programs that have been waiting in line, and to really come up with a real plan for Casco Bay. that actually meets its needs, eliminates the waiting list, and provides the things that still won't be there when this plan is done. And a $34 million plan sitting there in addition to the rest of the Sebago Technics needs staring us in the future, just added a whole lot to that number and doesn't, to me, seem like a reasonable path forward. So, as it is, I will be voting no, and I would really urge the board to figure out how do we actually address Casco Bay and provide the facilities that it needs that really meet its programmatic issues and desires, and not just keep kind of band-aiding it together in the place where we stuck it because there was room there at the time, not because it was ever the right place to house that program.
Ms. Morioni?
Well, actually, contemplating what Ms. Davis was talking about there, I have thought about that over the years. It has seemed to be, this is one of our shining stars of our district, and it often feels, again, like it doesn't get the attention it deserves. In this case, though, that's where I do feel like, okay, maybe it should get some attention and not be sort of the one pushed aside. I also agree that that those have been waiting, like Deering, for its windows. We set that up as a plan. This has been on the CIP, and yes, it did move forward. But my major concern, honestly, is what Mr. Scharf brought up with regards to the city council potentially already voting on this. And that's where I'm kind of feeling a little at a stalemate of, I mean, do we know if the city already voted on the CIP and here we are now in the ninth inning trying to, can you clarify that? I know we've already done questions, but can you help us understand?
I'm not 100% sure that I can fully understand that, that I can fully explain it. I know that there is a resolution that's been drafted. My understanding is that what was presented previously was an amendment to add $1.15 million to the CIP request, and that was not approved, as was pointed out earlier by the council. But there are orders being drafted to make this change, which is consistent with what the Finance Committee had indicated to us, is consistent with the conversations that I've had with the city manager and with the assistant city manager on this. So I don't think that that's factual, that it's that the horses left the barn or whatever, that this will actually be acted on by the council on the 24th, and that it will be sponsored by Councilman Ali.
So, with that, thank you for that clarification. As a board member, I want us to ensure that that this floor is safe, whatever you need to do to confirm that. I think, again, we have been approached not only this past year, but in previous years from our Casco Bay staff to get this done, or requested this for several years now. So I don't feel like it's something out of the blue that we bringing forward. I'm going to support this tonight, but I want us to look at exactly what Ms. Davis is talking about. This is a program or a school that has a waiting list that doesn't seem like it's potentially in the right. I don't know the answers to all those things. The staff, you know this, our principal knows this, is it in the right place? Could it potentially be expanded in some way? Could it be even moved into one of our other existing high schools? These are all questions I don't think we have asked enough of. So I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight, but I would like us as a board and as staff to delve deeper into this and what we can do to help this be the shining star and make it, again, the best it can be. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Thompson.
I just have a clarifying question. And I think from over the years that has been discussed that for expeditionary learning and the type of school this is, that we purposely have capped it at 400, because once we go beyond the 400, it loses the zest of why everyone wants to be there. And so I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, but then also, I think maybe to the point of the report that was done 5 years ago, it did explore putting it into City Hall, it did explore putting it into Portland High School, so maybe, since we're updating every other report, that maybe it's a good time to take a look at that for future needs at Casco. But I guess I just want clarification with regards to, while we want to grow and grow and grow, I think that there's a reason why we have not. Can you clarify that, please?
I'd be delighted to. It's been a pleasure to watch from a little bit of a distance as Casco Bay High School was created and developed. And I would certainly invite Brooke or Ben to come forward to add to this, if that's permissible, but can tell you that it was always my understanding that the amount of students was to be 400, and that wasn't guided by the structure or limitations. That was the plan, 100, 100, 100, 100. And I see people giving an affirmative.
Any other comments? Okay, I would just say I will be supporting this as well. If I recall back, I think in January, we had a joint Finance and Operations Committee meeting where Principal Pierce was present, and we did ask him the question about the appropriateness of the space. And he did say that while it's true that originally they were just kind of put where we had room for them, that it actually has worked out to be pretty perfect for them. And I see nods in the audience as well, and they're happy also to be with the PATHS program because they complement each other. And Ms. Thompson also pointed out, this is a plan that we've had for many years, and this has been a request for a very long time. And to me, as we make these CIP requests, we're always making patchwork requests. This, to me, doesn't feel like a patchwork request. It feels like an educational improvement request, which, that feels good to me to support it tonight. I don't know where the City Council is on this. I expect that they probably will have the question that Mr. Scharf raised this evening about where we're applying for state funding. What does that do to the trajectory of the school in 6 years? However, we have no way to determine that at this point. It could very well be that if, in fact, we were approved for state funding, we may improve the existing building as it is currently, and so that this would become part of the improvement that we're making an investment in today. So to me, either way, it seems like a good investment. Any other board discussion before we vote on this? All right, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of requesting that the city manager reallocate $1.2 million in his recommended CIP funds to be targeted for Casco Bay High School's renovation construction of the Great Room new entrance, please indicate. It's unanimous. Nope. All but one. All but two. No, okay. All but one. With the students voting in the affirmative and all those opposed. Ms. Davis. Okay, so we are right at 10 o'clock, and we have a policy that we're not supposed to vote after 10 o'clock.
Unless there's a motion, yeah.
Unless there's a motion to continue. How is the board feeling?
I'd like to make a motion to complete the 2 items on the agenda.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Ms. Morioni. All those in favor of completing the agenda this evening? Okay. And all those opposed? Okay, so Ms. Davis and Mr. Eder opposed. Consideration and action to authorize the board chair and superintendent to sign a contract with Munis to provide software services at a cost that will not exceed $500,000. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Morioni. Would the superintendent like to speak to the motion?
Alicia Gardner will speak to the motion.
So the City of Portland approved a contract with Tyler Technologies in November 2016 to bring on their financial system to Munis, which is a system designed solely for municipalities and school districts. It is not used in any other type of organization, so it's dedicated to fund accounting and governmental accounting. Not only does it do the accounting, but there is additional modules such as, work orders and bid management and interaction with your citizens and permitting, and it really runs the gamut of what municipalities are offering. And Tyler Technology has a system called ADS that a lot of smaller districts in Maine have been using, and they've taken basically the best parts of that and have incorporated that into Munis, which is used throughout Maine and throughout the country. So in the contract for Munis, the city created sort of an add-on addendum for the school district where we would move on to their finance system. We would share one system, and we would eliminate a lot of sort of the cross reconciliations and redundancies that both sets of staff are sort of performing the same work. We are getting the software at a significant discount. They've offered us a 50% discount on the software itself and waived our first year of maintenance, so it's over a $200,000 savings to start with. They're very serious about bringing the City of Portland and the Portland Public Schools on as a client. Obviously, it's the largest municipality and school district in Maine, and they really feel confident that they can do what we need it to do. So, our current system is a product of SunGard, who is a financial enterprise system for not just municipalities or school districts. It's, provides services to many other groups, so we're sort of a subset of that. The customer service isn't great. A lot of the times it gets pushed back onto us as, things that we need to figure out. I've been lucky enough to implement a Munis system in my prior job. The people who implement the product are great. The customer service is great. They're located right in Yarmouth, Maine. If there's significant issues, they'll invite you to come up and have workshops right in their building. They uniquely can offer, sort of roundtable discussions with other school districts, with other municipalities to talk about issues that you're coming up with, and they really work with you to figure it out. And if they can't figure it out, they, will fix the software so it figures it out. So it's a great product. I'm really excited to hopefully be bringing it to the Portland Public Schools, and can I answer any questions that you have?
Any questions? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. I just had a question. Do you see this being a part of the multi-year budget process, as we will have additional costs in the future of adding, whether it be modules? I know we cut some of them out in this budget, but do you foresee that we will add on to this program? And if so, do you have any projections, I'm sorry, it's getting late, as to what the additional cost for maintaining and then also a year-by-year outlook?
Yes, so the system maintenance, which essentially covers sort of our interactions with them for system support and kind of the back end, so like I said, it's waived in the first year. The second year, it's about $58,000, and it escalates 2%, 3%, and then 4% for the final year. So it's fixed through 5 years. It's similar to what we're paying now for e-finance, so it's not a significantly higher investment than we're making now, if at all. Modules that I think we were originally quoted will probably have the same deal that what we're getting right now. So we talked about work orders, which essentially would be maintenance tracking all of their work throughout the buildings to be done electronically. And we just really felt in this year, because we're going to be bringing that back over to the schools, that wasn't really a priority for year one, but certainly something that we can look forward to in the future. Bid management was another one of the modules that we decided not to move forward with. We're not doing a significant amount of bidding for really anything. I think it's sort of a one-off situation, so the way we're doing it now works fine. And cash management is just something we don't do here. That's all done by the Treasury and the city, and will continue to be done that way. I've talked to the city about that. But there's citizen self-service. There's a way for, citizens to log on and look at your financial data and ask questions and drill in. You can drill into how much have we spent with Dell this year? How much have we spent with WB Mason? What was budgeted? The amount of information you can get to is crazy. There's things in here that we don't have now. There's something called Tyler Content Manager. So we have the ability to sort of scan all of our all of our invoice documents that will be then stored within the system. So when you're looking up, what did we spend, in this account line, we can drill into pulling up the actual invoice instead of going into sort of the file and pulling it out. So just the data that we can store within the system that we can't do now would be amazing, and we can further kind of build on that. To be perfectly honest with you, we're getting most of everything that's available. They've put us together a really great package. One other thing that I did want to mention, that's sort of the last line, it's called BPC, and it's business processing. And what they're going to do is come in and look at our current process of how we're doing AP, or how we're doing accounts receivable, and how we're doing payroll, how we're doing timesheets, and really go through best practices of how they've seen some of their other clients do this same work, and sort of say, this is how our system can help you do better. Do you foresee this being a process that you could change? Does it fit within your current policies? And so it's definitely a step above and beyond of customer service, but the city was really encouraged by adding that into their budget, so we felt that we should as well. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we would have public comment on the motion. Seeing none. Any board discussion? Ms. Morioni.
I just want to say I'm definitely going to be voting in favor of this because of all the things you've talked about, Alicia, thank you. But also because I don't know how many of my fellow board members are aware, but with Anatomy of Leadership, which is a program in Portland High School and Deering High School, we just had over 50 students working with Tyler Technologies, and they worked since the fall on specific issues and questions around their companies that they could help solve for the company. And they just did a fabulous presentation last week talking about offering their recommendations and suggestions on each of their company concerns or challenges. And the Tyler Technologies is going to look at those and implement at least 2 or 3 of the students' suggestions and bringing them back in to be used almost like consultants for Tyler Technology. So they're bringing in our own students, and they're also expanding into a huge, large additional building, and apparently hiring up to 900 new employees in the next 5 to 10 years right there in Yarmouth, Maine. In other words, it's growing. It's a very solid company, it seems, and again, integrating our students already from high school level on. So I'm really excited that we're partnering and using them as a local business. And I think they have some great services to provide, and that they could be even using our students' ideas in the upcoming future, which is pretty cool. Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of authorizing the board chair and superintendent to sign a contract with Munis to provide software services at a cost that will not exceed $500,000, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Right. Yes, I do. Okay, last but not least, consideration and action to approve the vote entitled "Vote to Approve Submission of School Budget with Additional Local Funds" in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included in the minutes of this meeting. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Morioni. Alicia, are you speaking to this?
So the additional 200,000, I think, has been added to some language that we had provided to the board.
We need to have an amendment.
Right. Okay.
But can you just speak to what this is? Specifics of it?
Yes, so this authorizes the board to send a amount to the city council, and what is, this is authorizing additional amounts over and above what the state basically says that the school district should be allocating towards general fund expenditures. So this, the additional local funds of about 16.5 million exceeds the state's EPS model. And it says we're actually exceeding it by 14.7. And it talks about how we're funding things over and above basically the minimum that the state is saying, especially in the current budget year, where there has been significant changes to the teacher ed tech student teacher ratios. This number continues to sort of widen as we move forward with some of these EPS changes. So this is just sort of semantics that the state law requires us to fund amounts over and above sort of what they're saying are appropriate.
So this is the language that actually shows up on the ballot.
So this is not the language that shows up on the ballot. This is the language that the board is authorizing for a total education amount. I'm sure the board will recall that when this goes to the city council, they're actually going to be authorizing a series of warrant articles that are authorizing funding for regular education and transportation and operations and so on and so forth. And then additionally, we will allocate funds for food service and adult ed, as those are not typically included in the EPS module. So this is sort of the board funding over and above what the state allows. The total package will then go to the city council, and they will go through each level of warrant articles. So this is your hoop to jump through, and they will have separate hoops that are required as part of this process.
And do you want to address the amendment?
Yeah, so we need an amendment to reflect the increase of $200,000 that we discussed earlier for the crossing guards.
Ms. Thompson.
It's actually, we need to make changes to the amounts that are outlined here, I believe.
Yes, and we have those.
Yeah, so we have, yep.
So let's do, we'll do questions and then we'll get to that. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Hatzebuehler.
I move to amend that the city raises and appropriates $16,698,708 in additional local funds, which exceeds the state essential programs and services allocation model by $14,915,041 as required to fund the budget recommended by the Portland Board of Public Education.
Is there a second? Ms. Thompson. Okay, any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, any public comment on the amendment? Seeing none, any board discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. It's unanimous. Okay, now back to the main motion. Is there any discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the vote entitled Vote to Approve Submission of School Budget with Additional Local Funds in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included in the minutes of this meeting as amended. Please indicate. It's unanimous. Was that yay or a nay, Ms. Davis? A nay?
All those not in favor.
Okay. All those not in favor? Okay. Ms. Davis is opposed. Thank you. All right, there's no personnel, no board focus on education, and where it is after 10 o'clock, there's no public comment, and I would call for a motion for adjournment. Ms. Seeliger, seconded by Ms. Vendel. All those in favor? That's unanimous.